Hey everybody, Alexa here, and welcome back to Murder in the Mountains. Tori is our co-host this week.
Hello, hello.
And I know it's been, 8 weeks or something since I had an episode last. Just have been trying to soak in all the baby cuddles and time that I can, and it's been really hard to get away from that to research murder. But here we are, and I literally went through like 3 cases. I started researching one. I was like, I want to do this case. Maybe not now. Started another one. I was like, I don't think this one's it either. And then I started this one, and don't ask me why, because it's not good. I was just warning Tori, like, it's a doozy. There's child stuff involved, just a whole bunch of stuff. So listen at your own risk. It's similar to Albert Fish, where there was just a lot of bad things going on. So that's where we're at. So we're going to jump right in. Are you ready?
I am as ready as I can be, I guess, after that warning.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. So this week's case takes place in England in the 1970s. So we are going to talk about Fred and Rosemary West. Fred West was born as Frederick Walter Stephen West on September 29th, 1941, on a farm in Herefordshire, England. And if I mispronounce any of these names, I apologize. I'm trying my best. His father, Walter, was very strict, while his mother, Daisy, was overprotective of her 6 children. So the Wests relied solely on their farm for income, and the children were expected to help out on the farm doing, whatever needed to be done.
Oh, wow. Very secluded situation there.
Yes. And you would think that keeping busy on the family farm would have kept Fred out of trouble, but you would be wrong. He had a habit of stealing things, and his classmates described him as dim and routinely in trouble at school. So, according to Fred, his mother started to sexually abuse him when he was 12 years old, and his father would rape his daughters. And his father taught him bestiality. And
oh my God.
yeah. And Fred ended up molesting his sisters as well.
Oh my word. That's terrible.
So to say that his home life was a mess would be putting it lightly. And education was also not a priority for Fred, and he dropped out at the age of 15 and was barely literate at the time. So after leaving school, he began working at another local farm as a farmhand, and in his spare time, he would go to a youth club in a nearby town with his brother John, and he was just known to go around just like groping girls aggressively.
Jeez.
Just doing whatever he wanted to whoever he wanted, whenever he wanted.
I mean, I guess that lines up with how his parents taught him to be, and yeah, I guess that makes somewhat sense.
So a few years later, when he was 17, Fred got into a motorcycle accident that resulted in a broken arm and leg and a fractured skull. Due to his head injury, he began having bouts of rage that would just come and go like out of nowhere. And as if one head injury wasn't enough, he ended up falling down 2 flights of stairs on a fire escape after he groped a girl at the youth center and she punched him. So completely deserved.
Wow. Okay, yeah. I mean, yes, definitely deserved in that situation.
So we all know that, head injuries can have an impact on your behavior. So just keep that in your back pocket. Okay.
Especially second impact syndrome. So this guy's got 2 blows to the head at this point.
Correct. So we already touched on the fact that Fred was molesting his sisters. And in June of 1961, 20-year-old Fred got his 13-year-old sister Kitty pregnant.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Kitty told her parents that Fred had been raping her since the previous year, and Fred was arrested, which I thought was interesting considering his father did the same things and so did his mother, but what you gonna do? So when Fred was questioned by the police, he said, what, doesn't everybody do it? In regards to sexually abusing young girls.
Including his own sister.
Yeah.
That's, I guess because, she'd actually gotten pregnant from him. And so maybe that's why she felt the need to, talk about it or whatever. Yeah, they're like, who's the dad? She's like, oh, my brother. And so, yeah, I guess that. And he's like, oh, not everyone does this in their free time. Yeah.
Yeah, and it definitely sounds like a nurture, like versus like nature versus nurture. Still not excusable, but it definitely seemed like he was raised in this. So what do you expect him to do? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So his trial was set to start in November of that year, but as the time got closer, Kitty decided not to testify, so the case just fell apart and Fred was free to go. After spending some time living with his aunt, Fred packed things up with his family and moved back home. So, a year later, in September 1962, Fred rekindled a romance from the previous year with a woman named Catherine Renee Costello, who went by Renee. The two had met the year before at a dance hall, and they only dated like a few months before she went back to Scotland. But things progressed a lot faster this time, and Fred and Renee got married in November of 1962. So things weren't picture perfect, like even from the start, because Renee happened to be pregnant with another man's baby at the time. The father was an Asian bus driver back in Scotland, and the only reason Renee even came back to England was because her family wanted nothing to do with a mixed race baby.
Oh, wow. Okay.
However, Fred was happy to raise the little girl as his own, and baby Charmaine was born in March of 1963, but he was not entirely happy about her being Asian. So to explain to society like why she was Asian, and neither of them were, he told everyone that Renee actually miscarried her baby, so they adopted a little Asian girl.
Wow. When did you say this was? The 1960s?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, that I'm honestly fearful at this point for their daughter, because who the heck knows what's going to happen with him as a dad.
Correct. But... So he was not Father of the Year, not even when he had a daughter like with Renee, who they named Anna Marie, who was born in July of 1964.
Wow. Okay.
So he kept both girls essentially like caged into the bottom bunk of a bunk bed and told Renee that they could only come out when he was at work.
Oh my God.
He put bars around like the bottom bunk, basically.
What the heck? Okay.
And if you're like, well, maybe he wasn't Father of the Year, but maybe he was a good husband, the answer to that would also be a no.
Oh, well, that's crazy. I was not expecting you to say that at all.
So he cheated on Renee multiple times. And when Renee caught him, was she upset? I mean, sure, but she wasn't like, I forgive you, or let's go to couples therapy, or anything like that. Instead, she decided to have her own affair with a man named John McLaughlin.
Of course, John McLaughlin. Got it.
So when Fred caught Renee and John, he punched Renee in the face.
Oh.
And in return, John punched Fred. And then Fred sliced John's stomach with a knife. So John then punched Fred again. And then Fred stopped fighting back.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So after that occasion, anytime that John saw Renee, like with the bruises or she had a black eye or anything from Fred, John would go and beat up Fred. So literally, like, your wife's lover is coming over to beat you up. Which is kind of funny when you think about it, only because Fred is a total piece of crap.
Right, but I'm so confused why they don't just, get a divorce or, go their separate ways. Like, if her boyfriend is literally coming over to beat you up on, I'm assuming a routinely basis, then why not just call it quits at this point?
Right. So in November of 1965, Fred accidentally ran over a boy with his van and killed him.
What? Accidentally ran over a boy with his van. Okay.
Right. Apparently, it really was an accident because he was cleared by the police. But as a result, he was worried that the community would hate him. So he rented what they call a caravan in England, which to me sounded like the same as a mobile home or a trailer. So he took Renee, their nanny Isa McNeil, and her friend Anne McFall, and their two daughters, and they headed south to where they settled into a trailer park. So 1966 was a big year for Fred. He began having violent mood swings and beating up the nanny, Isa McNeil, and he continued beating Renee. He also began sexually abusing 3-year-old Charmaine and encouraged Renee into prostitution since he didn't make much money at his job at the slaughterhouse.
Oh my God. What a terrible guy. Terrible, terrible dude.
Renee was like, no, I'm done with all this, and reached out to her lover, John, to rescue her, the kids, and Isa.
Nice. Okay.
So John and Isa's boyfriend planned to come and get them, but their plan was foiled by Isa's friend Anne, who began to have feelings for Fred.
What? Why is anyone having feelings for Fred? No one should be having feelings for Fred.
Correct. And she literally is like living with them. Like she knows and sees exactly what's going on. But for some reason, she felt like her life would be better with this guy.
Okay, now who?
She's the friend of the nanny.
So the friend of the nanny is also living there. I thought it was just the nanny and Renee.
No, also the friend.
Great. So the friend is just like catching feelings for this man who sexually assaults his 3-year-old daughter and beats his wife and the nanny.
And the nanny, yeah.
Okay, okay, great. Have no words for that.
So the plan, was foiled. And when they arrived, Fred wasn't going to let them just leave. He held on to the kids while John beat him. But when the police arrived, they all left without the kids. And Fred told Renee that he would kill her if he ever saw her again. He didn't follow through with the threats, though, because Renee would visit the girls from time to time to make sure that they were okay. So in 1967, just a year after that whole ordeal, 18-year-old Anne McFall, who was the nanny's friend, became pregnant with Fred's baby.
Oh, God.
And when she was 8 months pregnant, in July of that year, she disappeared. Disappeared. Fred never filed a missing persons report, though, and only a month later, Renee moved back in with Fred.
What? Okay, all right.
Suspicious?
A little fishy, not gonna lie.
Yeah, but only after a year, she moved out again and left the girls with Fred.
This is just not a good situation at all.
And spoiler alert, it does not get any better.
You're like, the worst hasn't even happened yet. It's just like my brain keeps wanting to compare them to normal people, but obviously at this point that's just not the case. They are so far removed from what normal families look like and behave like. But it's every other thing that happens, I'm like, yeah, I guess I saw that one coming from the first situations.
So, with Renee gone and Anne missing, he had no woman to care for the kids. So what do? Temporarily place them with social services. I didn't even know that was a thing, but apparently it is because he did it on more than one occasion. I feel like if you did that even one time, they would be like, oh, you can't care for your children?
You would definitely think so.
You would be wrong. So, at the beginning of the episode, I said we were going to talk about Fred and Rosemary West, not Fred and Renee West.
I know. I was like, I know it started with an R, but I did not think that it was Renee. Okay. Anyway. All right. Great.
Yeah, so that was all just some background on Fred. So let's talk about Rosemary, or Rose, as she also went by. So Rosemary Letts was born on November 29th, 1953 to Bill and Daisy Letts. She was the 5th of 7 kids, and her mother suffered from severe depression. It was back in the day, okay? But doctors decided it would be a good idea to give her electroshock therapy while she was pregnant with Rose. Literally all the way up to just a few days before she was born.
What? And that, this is... Oh, wait, what? How late did you say this was? The 50s?
Yeah.
Early 50s?
Mm-hmm.
That is still, recent enough to where you'd think that they would know not to do some crazy mess like that. Obviously not, though. Okay.
Yep. So people speculate that this caused some damage to Rose and resulted in her moody behavior and lack of success in school, but it's not been proven. But I feel like it's a pretty good hypothesis.
when they say like moody behavior, that's probably like very superficial to the actual like behavior she was. I mean, because I would assume that it would definitely affect her mentally. I mean, and physically, if I had to guess. But what else did you say? She was bad at school?
Yeah.
Yeah. But just to say she has moody behavior is probably not giving the whole full story.
Yeah,
Anyway.
like that's just kind of putting it lightly, you know?
Yes, yeah.
So when she began going through puberty, she would walk around her house semi or fully naked in front of her brothers. And at the age of 13, she began to molest her 9-year-old brother when he went to sleep.
What the heck? What is up with these kids and the incest? Nastiness.
Right. And her father also sexually abused her and her older sister.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. And when her parents divorced when she was a teenager, she lived with her mom for a few months, but then went to live with her father. So let's fast forward to when she met Fred. It was the beginning of 1969, and 28-year-old Fred sees 15-year-old Rose, and he's like, yep. And she says no. Literally, she was initially disgusted by Fred because he didn't really like keep up with his appearance, but he kept trying, and she eventually gave in to him.
What? Just, okay. When you're describing this guy, I'm obviously not like thinking of as like a super very well kept man or anything, but I can only imagine like how nasty this guy really was.
And after talking with her, he found out she had never had a boyfriend, but she was promiscuous.
Oh, lovely.
He started giving her gifts and basically love bombing her until she agreed to a relationship. When she first started going over to Fred's trailer, she noticed that Charmaine and Anna Marie were severely neglected. Should that have been a red flag? Yes.
Yeah. Like your children aren't taken care of. They're not fed. They're not bathed. Yeah, very red flag.
But she was kind and nurturing to the girls, something that obviously lacked from Fred. So only a few weeks after meeting Fred, she quit her job at a local bakery and became a full-time nanny for Fred's kids. Seeing as she was 15 and he was 28, she kept the relationship a secret from her parents for a while. So Fred paid her the same amount as the bakery so her parents wouldn't know that she quit. But you can only keep that secret for so long, and she eventually told her parents after months of dating. To say that they weren't happy would be an understatement. Her mother quickly concluded that he was a pathological liar, and her father threatened to call social services if he continued to date Rosemary, which is ironic. I feel like that he was like protective of her, seeing as he was like raping her. But you know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a lot. So we're gonna continue with this because I just can't.
So Rose's father wasn't like just full of empty threats. He did end up calling social services and told them that their 15-year-old daughter was dating an older man and was involved in prostitution out of his trailer. So as a result, she was sent to live in a home for troubled teens where she was allowed to leave on weekends to visit her family. But obviously she was a teenager, so she went to see Fred instead. Note that Fred, the 28-year-old, did not get in trouble for his relationship with the 15-year-old. She's the one that got sent away.
Right, I was about to say, like, that seems like the right course of action, not to have a conversation with her about how this is wrong. But of course you wouldn't do that if you're molesting your child. So, there goes that. Also, I guess I'm assuming that the parents, like, knew Fred's reputation prior to her telling them that they were dating, or were they just this upset, you think, because he was so much older?
It was just the age. So, yeah, I don't think they knew his whole nutso background.
Okay.
Nor did Rose at the time.
Okay.
He's not going to be like, hello, I molest my 3-year-old daughter. And
after months of like being there and like basically living at his house or like nannying for him, you would think that like she would notice, I guess, she said that the kids were neglected when she first like met them. I don't know. Either way, doesn't matter.
So she turned 16 and left the group home to go back to her parents' house, but only because Fred was in jail for theft and unpaid fines. But you better believe that when he got released, it was only like a 30-day stint. She left her parents' house and moved into Fred's apartment where he was living at the time.
Cool, great. We love that.
Yeah. So because he was in jail, Charmaine and Anna Marie were at at social services. So he just swung by there to pick them up. You know, no big deal. It's like the freaking babysitter.
Right, yeah.
So if you thought her parents were just like, well, okay, you can live with Fred now, once again, you'd be wrong. So in order to try one last time to prove that there was a relationship between Fred and Rose, Rose's father ordered an exam by a police surgeon in February of 1970 and discovered that she was pregnant.
Oh, gosh.
So again, Rose was sent to a group home. Nothing happened to Fred, and she was released on March 6th under the terms that she ended the pregnancy and returned to live at home.
Oh, wow.
So Rose is like, yeah, of course, sure, no problem. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So she keeps the baby, moves back in with Fred, and at that point, her father just forbid her from ever coming home again.
Okay. They're like, we tried. We put you in a group home twice. We've done all that we can.
Yeah, except, do anything to Fred.
Right.
So months later, on October 17th, 1970, Rose gave birth to her daughter, Heather Ann. And there is speculation on whether or not Heather is actually Fred's or Rose's father's.
Yeah, that's the question. The $1 million question.
2 months later, Fred was put in prison for stealing car tires and was not released until June of 1971. So this left 17-year-old Rose to care for Charmaine, Anna Marie, and Heather all by herself. Imagine being 17 and caring for 3 children.
Yeah, no, I can't. I cannot imagine that, actually.
Me either. So she would harshly criticize and beat Charmaine and Anna Marie.
No! Please, no! Stop this!
So she would also get angry when Charmaine wouldn't react or cry when getting abused. Like, Charmaine would just take it, she wouldn't show any emotion, she wouldn't give Rose that satisfaction, but Anna Marie would, and it would just make her so mad that Charmaine would not react.
What a narcissistic lady. Okay, anyway.
So Rose took the girls to visit Fred in prison on June 15th, 1971, just 9 days before he got released. And it was somewhere between those 9 days when Rose murdered Charmaine.
What? Murdered the kid?
Yes.
How old was she?
She was 8 years old. And Fred goes to jail, leaves Rose with 3 children. When he comes home, there are 2 children.
And he's like, what the heck happened to that's his firstborn, right?
Yes, so that's actually technically not his child. Remember, that's the Asian bus driver and Renee's child, but either way.
Okay. Yeah.
He's cared for her, since she was born, so.
Right.
So I don't know what she told Fred about how or why she was murdered, but she told neighbors and her school and Anna Marie that Renee came and got her to live with her. So her mom just came back and got her. And Rose stored Charmaine's body in the coal cellar until Fred was released and he was able to bury her in the backyard.
Okay, so he was aware that she had just killed his daughter.
Yes.
Okay, and did he have any sort of reaction to this, or he just did his due diligence and buried the body?
It appeared that he just did what he needed to do and buried the body.
Wow. All right.
If you remember, I mentioned that Renee would come periodically to see her children. And according to Renee's sister, she was very anxious about the welfare of her children and decided to demand custody from Fred.
She's like, I'm expecting 3 children back in my care.
Well, just 2, because one of them was Rose's, not Renee's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Renee made the trip to Fred's home in August of 1971. So Charmaine had been dead for 2 months by then. When she arrived, she made her demands to Fred and was never seen again.
Oh, okay. So at this point, the one pregnant girl.
The nanny's friend.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What was her
Anne.
Anne. And then Charmaine. And now Renee.
Correct.
Are missing and or dead.
Yes.
Okay.
So when her body was discovered, it was determined that she died of strangulation and that her body was dismembered, put into plastic bags, and buried next to some trees only a mile away from where Fred grew up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So far in their relationship, Rose has been put in a group home twice. Fred went to jail twice. Rose had a child, and Rose killed a child. And they thought, wow, like, we're, like, really good for each other. So, like, let's get married.
I mean, honestly, I couldn't think of a better match. Really, it sounds like they're perfect for each other.
So they agreed. And on January 29th, 1972, they had a courthouse wedding with only Fred's brother John in attendance. Shortly after their wedding, the newlyweds moved from their home where Charmaine was murdered to a new 3-story home at 25 Cromwell Street. To help earn some extra money, they rented out some rooms on the upper floors. The tenants had their own stove and bathroom and were not allowed to go into the west's private areas, which is a good thing because on June 1st, 1972, only 5 months after they got married, 19-year-old Rose gave birth to their second daughter together. They named her May June because her birthday is on June 1st.
Okay. That's so clever. Okay. So cute.
So, you know, like, after you have a baby, there's like that whole 6-week waiting period before you can have sex or do anything, you know?
Oh, okay. Yes. Yep.
So I don't know if Rose waited that 6 weeks or not, but shortly after having May, she began prostituting herself out of one of the rooms in their home.
Oh, gosh.
She would put out ads in the paper regarding her services, and Fred was like all for that. Great idea.
Can you imagine just using a room in your house to do your sex work from? That's just okay.
Fred would watch through peepholes or partake in threesomes. He also installed a baby monitor in what became known as Rose's room so that he could watch from other rooms in the house if necessary.
Oh, my word. This is absurd, Alexa. This is crazy.
Yeah. So she also installed a red light outside the door so everyone knew not to disturb her when she was conducting her business.
Well, that's nice.
And Fred even installed a separate doorbell on their back door for her clients to ring.
Wow, so fancy.
Yeah, like they just had a full-blown storefront business, you know?
This is a legitimate business at this point. If you have a doorbell and a red light, then you're officially a business. Yes.
Agreed. So one of her clients was her own father, who found out she was in the prostitution business and decided to employ her.
Oh my God. Like out of support, or she was just that great, or what? Like, maybe
I don't
both.
have an answer because, I mean, he was already raping her, you know, when she lived with him. So I guess he just came and paid for it now. And maybe she was just like, might as well get paid for it. I don't know.
That's terrible beyond belief. Okay, anyway.
So by the time she was 30, she had 8 children, 3 of which were by clients, not Fred.
What? I was about to say, how did the heck did we get to 8 children? Because she had only had 2 by the time they into that
by
house.
the time she was 19, she had 2.
And then, oh wow. So she had like 6 babies within 10 years.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So needless to say that Rose and Fred were not great people or great parents. Violence was very prevalent in the household, mainly at the hands of Rose, but sometimes Fred. It would often be for no good reason or due to something like that she caused. She sliced May's chest with a knife repeatedly on one occasion. On another occasion, she beat her son Stephen over the head with a bowl because she stepped in the bowl that he was using to mop. Like he was like doing a chore. She steps in the bowl and then beats him with the bowl.
What the heck? I guess that does not surprise me. She's been crazy from the get-go.
Between 1972 and 1992, her children were taken to the ER 31 times. But they were all explained away as accidents and never reported to social services. Something that would absolutely not happen nowadays.
No! 31 times? Crazy. That's insane. And you have to do like damage to take them to the ER.
Yeah, not just like bandage it up or tell them to suck it up or whatever.
Right. Holy cow. Okay.
All right, so we'll just slap a warning on. We slapped a warning on the whole episode, but this next part in particular. So the abuse was not just physical, it was sexual as well. Fred raped 8-year-old Anna Marie after Rose forced her to undress and tied her to the mattress and gagged her.
Oh my God.
Afterwards, Anna Marie was in pain and had a hard time walking. Rose responded with a laugh and said, "I'm sorry. Everybody does it to every girl. It's a father's job. Don't worry and don't say anything to anybody," and threatened to beat her if she did tell.
Oh my God. That's so messed up, like beyond messed up. Like I want to cry right now. That's so terrible.
And honestly, like, I'm not excusing anything that Rose is doing, obviously, but like for her to think that it's just what happens because her father did it to her. Fred did it to his daughters. You know what I mean? And she's just like, don't worry about it. Every father does it to their daughter. It's like she's obviously a victim too. It doesn't excuse anything, but it's very sad.
Yeah, it's like they both, for some reason, it makes me feel like this is like some type of culture or something from the time period, because why is it that multiple families are like both of these kids grew up in like sexually abusive households?
Yeah, like what are the odds? And then they found each other.
Right. That's so crazy.
So oftentimes Rose would also sexually abuse Anna Marie or would tie her to random pieces of furniture and have Fred rape her.
So disgusting.
Fred and Rose then made her begin prostituting herself at the home when she was 13, but she made her clients tell her that she was 16. And Rose would be in the room at all times to make sure she didn't reveal her real age, but I would say that she probably liked watching also.
Ugh, so gross.
So that was just a little sneak peek into the home life of the Wests. So now we're going to rewind back to 1972. Fred and Rose picked up a 17-year-old hitchhiker named Caroline Owens in October of that year. Caroline told them that she was having trouble at home and was headed to see her boyfriend. When they found out that she was in need of a job, they offered her a nanny job looking after their 3 kids, because the other 5 had not been born yet. She agreed and moved into their home and shared a room with Anna Marie. So remember that, like, at this point, Rose had began a prostitution business out of her house. Caroline definitely noticed, and when she asked Rose about it, she said that it was a massage business.
Nice.
And she was like, oh, okay, like, no big deal. That wasn't until Rose and Fred began to make sexual advances towards her. It was at that point that she was like, I'm out of here, and told them that she'd be leaving and no longer working for them.
Okay.
So Fred and Rose could not just see this woman leave without getting what they wanted from her. So they came up with a plan to abduct and rape her. They knew where she hitchhiked, so they looked for her along that route. And when they found her on December 6, 1972, they lured her into their car with a promise of an apology. You know, because how people will often, brush off, oh, maybe I overreacted. And they didn't actually mean what I thought that they meant. Maybe they weren't.
Yes,
actually,
I can see that.
Just explaining it away,
Yes.
So she got into the car and her and Rose were in the backseat and Fred drove. Rose began to feel her up. And Caroline was like, heck no, this is exactly what I thought y'all were doing this whole time. So she began to fight Rose off. Fred stopped the car and beat her until she became unconscious.
Oh my God. She's like, I just didn't want you to touch me inappropriately is all. And he's like, nope.
Yeah. We're no, we're going to. That's our whole idea. So Rose then bound and gagged her with a scarf and duct tape and then brought her back to their home. Once at their house, Rose drugged Caroline and then rebound and gagged her. Rose and Fred then raped her multiple times and threatened to kill her. So Fred then had the audacity to ask her if she would be willing to work for them again as their nanny.
What? Okay. She's like, do I feel like I don't have a choice at this point? Okay, go on.
Yeah, so she was like, maybe like this is my only chance at survival. So she agreed and began vacuuming their house. Like after this horrendous experience. So later that day, her and Rose went to the laundromat and Caroline was able to escape.
Oh, great.
When she returned home, her mother saw all the wounds like on her daughter and demanded to know what happened. She told her everything that went down, so they went to the police and the Wests were arrested and charged with assault, indecent assault, bodily harm, and rape. The case went to trial in 1973, so like only a few weeks after the attack, but Caroline decided she could not face them in court and decided not to testify. Due to lack of evidence of the rape and assault charges, those were dropped, and Rose and Fred pled guilty to indecent assault and causing bodily harm. They had to pay a fine, and they were free to go.
Oh my God. That just was handled completely wrong. Like, of course she wasn't able to face them. She was just, like, terribly assaulted by them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon at all for victims to not want to face their attacker. That should be, their statement should be more than enough, and they should not, like, have to actually go to court.
Right.
So only 3 months after they were arrested for their crimes against Caroline, they were back at it. Fred set his sights on 19-year-old Linda Goff. She frequently visited the West home because she was having an affair with two of their tenants. On April 19th, 1973, she moved into the West home and was never seen again.
What?
When the tenants and even Linda's mother called to ask about her, they were told that she was forced to leave the home after she hit one of their children, and they didn't know where she went after that.
What? No. No, no, no. No, 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 no. I was gonna say, like, do we know if the tenants knew of what was going on, like, with any of this?
I would say no, because they're not allowed to, like, go in their area. You would think there would be noise, but I mean, I can't confirm, but none of them called the police or anything, so it makes me believe that they were not aware of what was going on. So when Linda's dismembered body was eventually found, her jaw was completely wrapped and taped to silence her, and 2 small tubes had been inserted into her nose to allow her to breathe. Long sections of knotted fabric were also discovered with her remains, and they determined that she had likely been suspended from holes carved into the beams supporting the ceiling and was then buried in their cellar.
That's crazy. Just say, like, suspended from the ceiling?
Yeah, like she was, like, hanging, like, tied up, like, by her arms, like, hanging from the ceiling.
Oh my God. Okay.
So their next victim did not live with them and wasn't associated with their home in any way. Her name was Carol Cooper, and she was 15 years old. In 1973, she was living in a children's home and had just seen a movie with her boyfriend. She was waiting at a bus stop when Fred and Rose abducted her. Carol was also suspended from the wooden beams of the cellar before her abuse and murder. Sandwiched with Linda, she died from strangulation before her body was dismembered and buried in a shallow grave in the cellar. So 21-year-old Lucy Partington, 21-year-old Teresa Siegenheiler, 18-year-old Juanita Mott, and 15-year-old Shirley Hubbard were also killed by strangulation, dismembered, and buried in the cellar at 25 Cromwell Street, all within a 17-month period.
Oh my God. Okay, so they just were, like, burying their bodies under their house? Like, how many
Like,
people?
in their basement, not even like a crawl space, just like in their basement.
Ew, ew. Okay, first of all, ew. Second of all, how many people is that total?
So that's like 6 people within a 17-month period, not including Charmaine and Renee.
Oh my God. Okay.
So after those 6 murders and having to bury bodies in their basement, things got a little crowded. So Fred concreted over the bodies and basically finished the floor down there and created a bedroom for his older children.
Oh, wow.
So they literally slept on top of these bodies.
If that's not a recipe for a haunted house, I don't know what is.
The house is known as the House of Horrors.
Okay.
So they killed Juanita Mott in 1975, and then they had a little bit of a break until May of 1978. Fred decided to kill an 18-year-old tenant named Shirley Robinson. Fred had met Shirley in April of 1977 at a local cafe, and then she began living at the West home as a tenant. At the time of her murder, she was very pregnant, reportedly with Fred's baby, and Rose was not happy about it. The West began burying bodies in their backyard garden, and this is where Shirley's dismembered body was eventually discovered. She had not been restrained or sexually assaulted like the others, so it's believed that the only motive in her murder was to get rid of the threat that Rose saw her as. Like, oh, she's pregnant with my husband's baby, she's got to go.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
But does it? Because she literally had 3 other people's children.
I was about to say, she's definitely not the first other person to be pregnant with your husband's kid. But on second thought, those ladies are also dead or missing. So, yep.
So their next murder was a year later on August 5th, 1979. A few months earlier, 15-year-old Allison Chambers once again came to live with the West as their live-in nanny after she ran away from a children's home that she was living at.
How old is she? 15?
Yes.
What a pattern. Literally, what a pattern. Okay.
She was strangled and dismembered and buried in the garden. They ended up sending a letter to her family that she had written before her murder with a postmark from a different city to keep suspicion away from them.
Okay, put in effort for, this one, but that's weird that they, put in effort to, you know.
It doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So with that being said, you're probably like, how in the world is nobody suspicious of these people? So many girls have come in and few have come out. And Fred and Rose always seem to have an excuse oh, their mother came and got them. Oh, we kicked them out. Oh, she just left. We don't know where she went.
Yeah.
Not to mention the abuse their children suffered between beatings and rape by Fred and Rose.
Right, and had to go to the hospital several times.
Right. And the kids were threatened with violence, not to speak about the horrors that went on in the home. So when word got back to the West that their daughter Heather confirmed rumors of abuse and Rose's prostitution, they knew she had to be dealt with.
Oh, wow.
Heather left school in 1986 when she was 16 years old and began interviewing for jobs so that she could move out of her home. By mid-June of that year, she hadn't had any luck and was visibly upset, to her siblings. So on June 19th, her siblings went to school, and by the time they came home, Heather wasn't there. Fred and Rose told them that she had left to accept a job at a summer camp in another town, but she had been previously turned down for that job. She really wanted that job, and she got rejected, and her siblings knew that because she was very upset about it. And when neighbors asked where she was, Rose told them that they got into a bad argument and she ran away. So when the other kids asked why they weren't receiving letters from Heather, their parents said that she actually ran away with a lesbian lover.
Oh, nice.
2 of her siblings, May and Stephen, told their parents that they should report her as missing, but Fred said that would be bad because she was wanted for credit card fraud.
What?
Oh, we can't say that, she's missing because then if the police find her, they're going to take her to jail.
Yeah, that's the real problem. That's the real issue here.
So, in the years after her disappearance, Fred occasionally jokingly told the children that they would, quote, end up under the patio like Heather if they either misbehaved or told about the abuse, to anyone outside of their household.
Oh, my God.
Fred then built a barbecue pit right across from where Heather was buried and then placed a table on her grave for the children of the family to sit at whenever the West held family gatherings in their garden. Completely messed up.
That is very messed up. I was just about to say. That's beyond screwed up. Puts their, rooms over dead bodies and then puts their, picnic table over their sister's dead body.
Correct.
Disgusting.
So years later, in May of 1992, Fred raped and sodomized his 13-year-old daughter, Louise, for the first time. When Louise told Rose what happened, she said, "Oh, well, you were asking for it."
Ugh, this Rose lady. Actually, Fred and Rose both, they gotta go.
They gotta go. So Louise was raped 3 to 4 more times, one of which was videotaped. And after one encounter, she was bleeding, and Rose told her, well, what did you expect?
Oh my God. This is awful.
But the end is near, if that's any consolation.
Okay, the light is at the end of the tunnel.
So in August of that year, Louise told a friend what was happening. That friend told her mother, who anonymously called the police. Finally, somebody is stepping in to help these children.
Yeah, thank God.
So the police went to the home and searched it and found 99 pornographic videos, some homemade and some not, but they did not find any showing the children.
Okay.
So Louise gave a statement, and all of the children were given an exam which showed sexual and physical abuse. They told police that Rose committed most of the physical abuse while Fred was responsible for the sexual abuse, but Rose definitely knew about what was happening. So all of the children were placed into foster care after this.
Okay, great.
As a result, the police began an investigation, eventually leading to Fred being charged with 3 counts of rape, 1 of sodomy, and Rose as an accomplice. She was also charged with child cruelty, inciting her husband to engage in sex with their daughter, and obstruction of justice.
Okay.
When questioned about where Heather was, Fred claimed Heather was alive and well and supporting herself via prostitution. And Rose initially said that she didn't know where Heather was, but then she said that she paid her to leave so the other kids did not find out that she was a lesbian.
Stories don't add up.
And the only reason why they even thought she was a lesbian is because when Fred would rape her, she would fight back as if she did not want it. They're like,
yeah.
she must be a lesbian.
I was gonna ask, like, what made her start saying that she was a lesbian? Like, why?
Literally what anybody would do.
That's so messed up. Like, beyond messed up. And she's, like, literally trying to get away. And they're like, oh, that's so strange.
Must be a lesbian.
Right. What the heck? Okay.
So the next day, Rose made bail under the condition that she did not communicate with her husband or kids before the trial.
No! Face palm times 20.
Yep.
No.
So Louise did not actually want to see her father go to jail, which is something that we see a lot in children of abuse. And Anna Marie said nothing happened because she saw how unhappy her siblings were and she was afraid of what would happen if she did testify. So with both victims saying that nothing happened, in June of 93, the charges were dropped against Fred and Rose, but the children remained in foster care. Police were determined to find out what happened to Heather after investigating and finding like no signs that she was alive, no social security activity, no financial activity, or nothing. They also discovered that Charmaine and Fred's first wife, Renee, had disappeared in 1971, but no missing persons reports were filed. So luckily the detectives didn't stop after the charges were dropped. They're like, something's going on here and we're going to figure out what it is.
Right. 20 years later.
So after being told that Fred would joke about ending up like Heather under the patio, police decided to get a search warrant for Heather's body at the 25 Cromwell Street home.
Great.
On February 24th, 1994, the search warrant was issued and Rose and Fred were frantic. Like when they were searched, they said that Rose went pale.
Well, great. I'm glad.
So Fred tried to give a statement to police about Heather, saying she was alive but part of a drug cartel. So again, that's another story that they told. And is the drug cartel that active in England? I don't know.
I mean, there's no telling, but first it's the lesbian thing, then it's prostitution, now it's the drug cartel.
Wow, she's really mixed up in some stuff, isn't she?
Right. Yeah.
So police didn't buy it, and they brought in an excavation team.
Heck yeah.
When Fred saw the links that they were going through, he went to the police station and decided to make a full confession.
Wow. A full confession to her murder or to all of them?
Thank you for asking. So he told police that he strangled Heather in a fit of rage and then dismembered her body in the downstairs bathroom, all while Rose was with a client upstairs. He said that he stored her body parts in a dustbin until he could dig her grave, but made sure to add that Rose had nothing to do with it.
Okay. What a gentleman.
Right? He told police that he would tell them exactly where she was buried, and at 4 a.m. on February 26, her remains were discovered. Next to her bones were her fingernails in a pile, which led police to believe that they were removed individually to torture her before she died.
That's so disturbing.
As they did more digging, they found 2 additional bodies, Shirley Robinson and another woman that he either would not or could not identify. So after asking Fred about the whereabouts of Renee and Charmaine, he passed this letter to detectives via his lawyer. It said, I, Frederick West, authorize my solicitor, Howard Ogden, to advise Superintendent Bennett that I wish to admit a further approximately 9 killings, expressly Renee, Charmaine, Linda Goff, and others to be identified. He then told them he'd find them in the cellar of his home.
Wow. Okay. And he still claims that Rose had nothing to do with it.
Yes. So on June 30th, 1994, Fred was charged with 12 murders and Rose with 9, though she claimed her innocence the entire time. And anytime Fred would try to touch or communicate with Rose, she would flinch or ignore him, and she would not reply to the letters that he wrote her.
What? Like he was trying to keep you out of jail. Like he was trying to say that you had no part in it.
And I wonder if she's trying to like play that angle, like on her end, like, oh, I'm going to flinch, like he abused me. I'm not going to reply to him because I'm so glad that I'm away from this bad man.
Right. Yeah. I guess that does make a ton of sense. Okay.
So this caused Fred to sink into a depression and made him change his statement that he acted alone. He then changed like everything, and he implicated Rose in all of the murders except for that of Ann McFall, which he said Renee killed.
Great.
She's probably like, oh, well, that backfired.
Didn't think that was going to happen, did you, Rose?
So on New Year's Day, 1995, Fred hung himself in his jail cell and left this note to Rose and the only 2 kids to visit him in jail. It said, to Rose West, Steve, and May. Well, Rose, it's your birthday on November 29th, 1994, and you will be 41, and still beautiful and still lovely, and I love you. We will always be in love. The most wonderful thing in my life was when I met you. Our love is special to us. So, love, keep your promises to me. You know what they are. Where we are put together forever and ever is up to you. We loved Heather, both of us. I would love Charmaine to be with Heather and Renee. You will always be Mrs. West all over the world. That is important to me and to you. I haven't got you a present, but all I have is my life. I will give it to you, my darling. When you are ready, come to me. I will be waiting for you.
Oh my God. So disturbing, like beyond belief. Come and join me whenever you're ready. Like as if you're not like literally dying. That's so crazy. I'm so shook right now.
So Rose went to trial for 10 counts of murder because Charmaine's murder was added after, like, Fred changed his statement. She was found guilty on all charges after a 7-week trial. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole and is still serving out her sentence and still claims her innocence. And their house was completely demolished because of the horrific acts that happened there. It was demolished, excavated, so nothing remained, and it was like turned into a public walkway or something.
Yeah, as it should be. No one should ever live in a house built on top of dead people. You know, not the move.
Not the move.
So they recovered their remains? I mean, can you get remains out of concrete like that?
I think so. I don't know. I'm sure maybe there's damage to them. I'm not entirely sure, but they were able to recover all the bodies.
Okay, that's good. That's such a crazy story. Like from the very beginning, it was insane. Like I have never heard anything that like disturbing and like so full of sexual violence. That's crazy to me. The fact that they like just thought that this was like normal because I mean that's how their parents like raised them.
Yeah. And it's very, very sad. And just like, I don't know, generational. You know what I mean?
Right. I wonder how like their children are doing now.
Yeah. So here's a little info on where are they now, I guess. So if you remember, like, Fred's brother John, who was the only witness at their wedding, yada, 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 he ended up hanging himself in his garage because he was awaiting trial for raping his niece, Anna Marie, and another girl at his brother's house. So Anna Marie ended up attempting suicide by drowning herself in 1999. Stephen also made a suicide attempt in 2002 by trying to hang himself. And in 2004, he was arrested for 9 months for having unlawful sex with a 14-year-old girl on multiple occasions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And their youngest son, Barry, who we didn't hear about in the story, we didn't hear about a lot of their, 8 children in the story, killed himself of a drug overdose in 2020 at the age of 40. But he was known to have battled drug addiction and had psychiatric problems because of what he witnessed and went through as a child.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, considering what they went through. I was hoping that they would make it out to a better side of life, I guess, but how can you really escape all of that trauma, really? I mean, especially if you're not getting the proper therapy or help. And I doubt that they were, considering, they were never really given help at any point during their childhood, after going to the emergency room and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's, a very sad ending. Do you have any other final thoughts or comments or anything? This was a lot to digest.
Yeah, that definitely was a lot to digest. Definitely, I would say that that's the most disturbing that you've had at this point. That's a crazy story from start to finish.
And I don't know why this was the one that I was like, yep, this is the one I'm going to do. I'm just coming back with a bang, I guess.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Go big or go home, I guess.
I will be posting photos on our Instagram at Murder in the Mountains so y'all can see what Fred and Rose actually look like, because I know you have an image in your head, I'm sure. And once you see them, you're going to be like, that is not at all what I was picturing. Yeah. So that's always fun. And then you guys can also leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And come back next week for another episode of Murder in the Mountains. See ya.
Bye.